The last light of the ancient crystal dimmed in Elder Thalindra's hands. She watched it fade with eyes that had seen 10,000 seasons pass. Around her, the great forest of Alinder grew silent. The trees that once sang with magical energy now stood still like ordinary wood. The streams that flowed with healing waters now carried only simple water. The world was changing, and the elves could not stop it. For millennia, the elven people had protected the realm with their magic. They had woven shields of pure light around cities. They had grown crops from barren soil with a whisper. They had healed the sick with a touch. But now, the source of all their power was dying. The wellspring, the ancient pool of magical energy deep beneath their capital, had begun to dry up 300 years ago. Every decade since, the elves grew weaker. Their spells became shorter. Their enchantments failed faster. And now, at last, the final crystals were going dark. Thalindra called an emergency meeting of the Elder Council. 7 elves, each more than 5,000 years old, gathered in the Great Hall. Their faces showed something elves rarely felt: fear. "We must find a new source of power," said Elder Vareth, his voice cracking like old paper. "Perhaps the Dwarven Mountains still hold magical ore. The dwarves abandoned their deep mines centuries ago," replied Elder Seraphina. "The magical veins there have also run dry. We are not alone in this crisis." "Then we must learn to live without magic," said Elder Corinth, the youngest among them at only 4,000 years. "We must adapt." The council fell into shocked silence. An elf without magic was like a bird without wings. It was unthinkable. It was terrifying. But as they looked at the dying crystal in Thalindra's hands, they knew it was also inevitable. Meanwhile, in the human city of Ironhaven, a young engineer named Marcus Cole was presenting his latest invention to the city council. The humans had never possessed magic. For centuries, they had watched the elves perform wonders while they struggled with simple tools. But struggle had taught them something valuable. It had taught them to solve problems without supernatural help. "This device," Marcus said, holding up a complex machine of gears and tubes, "can purify water faster than any elven enchantment. It requires no magical crystals. It needs only coal and human hands to operate." The council members examined the device with interest. Humans had always been curious, always tinkering, always improving. While elves relied on ancient spells passed down unchanged for millennia, humans invented new solutions every generation. "How many of these can you build?" asked Councillor Helena, a sharp-eyed woman who governed Ironhaven's trade district. "With enough workers and materials, hundreds per month," Marcus replied. "We can send them to every village in the realm." News of the magical decline had reached human lands months ago. Some humans had celebrated, glad to see the proud elves brought low. But wiser humans understood that a realm without magic would face new challenges. Crops that had been blessed by elven druids would now fail. Healing temples that cured plague would close. Defense shields around cities would fall, leaving everyone vulnerable to monsters and invaders. Marcus understood this better than most. His grandmother had been saved by elven healers when he was a child. He held no hatred for the elder race. He only wanted to help. When the first elven delegation arrived in Ironhaven, the humans were ready. Elder Thalindra herself led the group, her ancient pride warring with desperate need. She had never thought she would come begging to the short-lived humans. But her people were starving. Their magical farms had failed. Their children were growing sick without healing spells. They had no choice. "We seek trade," Thalindra said formally, hiding her shame behind ceremony. "We offer our knowledge of herb lore and our skill in crafting fine goods. In exchange, we need food and medicine." Mayor Roland of Ironhaven nodded thoughtfully. He was a practical man, more interested in results than in old grudges. "We can certainly provide food. Our new farming machines have given us surplus crops this season. But I have a different proposal, Elder. Talindra raised an elegant eyebrow. Speak. Instead of simple trade, let us work together. Your people have knowledge we lack. You understand the natural world in ways we are only beginning to learn, and we have skills you need. Our engineers can build machines to replace what magic once provided. Together, we could accomplish more than either race could alone. The suggestion was revolutionary. For all of recorded history, elves and humans had lived separately. Elves considered humans to be crude and short-sighted. Humans resented elves for their arrogance and their magical advantages. But desperation has a way of breaking down old walls. I will consider your proposal, Talindra said carefully. But inside, she felt a strange new emotion. Hope. The first joint project began within the month. Human engineers worked alongside elven scholars to create a new kind of medicine. The elves knew exactly which herbs could cure which diseases. They had studied plants for thousands of years. But without magic to enhance their remedies, simple herbs were not strong enough to fight serious illness. Human chemists solved this problem. They learned to concentrate the healing compounds, to combine them in new ways, to create medicines more powerful than any herb alone. The results amazed everyone. A young elven girl named Lyra, dying from a wasting disease that magic could no longer cure, recovered fully after taking the new medicine. Her grateful parents wept openly. They had been prepared to watch their daughter die. Word of the miracle spread quickly. More elves came to Ironhaven, seeking human help. And humans traveled to elven lands, curious to learn the secrets the elder race had kept for millennia. Not everyone welcomed this change. Among the elves, a faction led by Lord Keyleth argued that accepting human help was a betrayal of their heritage. We are the firstborn children of the world, he proclaimed. We should not lower ourselves to depend on these mayflies. But fewer elves listened to such talk as more of their traditions failed. When the great barrier around the elven capital flickered and died, leaving the city defenseless, human soldiers arrived to help patrol the walls. When elven granaries stood empty, human merchants brought wagon loads of grain. Pride meant little to hungry children. Marcus became the leading figure in the cooperation effort. He spent months in the elven forests, learning everything he could about how magic had once worked. If he could understand the principles, he reasoned, he might find scientific ways to achieve similar results. One evening, Elder Thalindra found him studying an ancient text about weather control. The elves had once been able to summon rain during droughts. Now the sky obeyed no one. You cannot replicate this with your machines, she said gently. Some things are beyond mortal craft. Marcus looked up, eyes bright with determination. Perhaps, but humans had a saying. Give us enough time, and we will find a way. We may not control the weather tomorrow, but in 100 years? 1,000? Who knows what we might achieve? Thalindra smiled despite herself. This was what she had never understood about humans. Their lives were so short, barely a century for the luckiest among them. Yet they thought in terms of generations, building on each other's work, always reaching for impossible goals. Elves had lived so long that they rarely felt urgency. Why rush when you had forever? But now forever had run out. Perhaps, she admitted, we have been too proud. We relied on magic so completely that we never learned other skills. When it worked, we were powerful beyond measure. But now that it fails, we are helpless as children. Your people never had magic, so you learned to survive without it. You became strong in ways we never imagined. The years passed, and the cooperation deepened. Human universities began accepting elven students, teaching them engineering and science. Elven libraries opened to human scholars, sharing botanical knowledge and historical records. Marriages between the races, once forbidden, became merely unusual and then almost common. The old pure-blood families on both sides grumbled. Some elves retreated to remote valleys, trying to preserve the old ways. Some humans wanted nothing to do with the former masters of the world. but the majority on both sides saw the benefits of working together. When the Great Plague swept across the eastern lands, human doctors and elven healers fought it together. The combination of elven knowledge about disease patterns and human chemical medicines saved millions of lives. When barbarian armies invaded from the north, human soldiers with elven-designed tactics and elven archers with human-made weapons drove them back decisively. A century after the magic finally died completely, a young half-elven scientist named Sarah Cole stood before a great assembly in the unified capital. She was the great-granddaughter of Marcus Cole and an elven scholar named Elindra. In her hands, she held a small device that glowed with soft light. "This is not magic," she announced. "It is science. We have learned to capture the energy of the sun and store it in crystals. Not enchanted crystals like our elven ancestors used. Manufactured crystals that we can make in unlimited quantities." The crowd gasped as she demonstrated. Light poured from the device, clean and steady. It could illuminate homes, power machines, and yes, even help crops grow faster. It was not magic, but it was just as wondrous. Elder Thalindra, now incredibly ancient but still alive, watched from her seat of honor. Tears ran down her lined face. The old ways had died, yes. The magic she had loved since childhood was gone forever. But in its place, something new had grown. Something that belonged to everyone, not just the gifted few. Something that could be learned, shared, and improved by each new generation. After the ceremony, Sira approached the ancient elf. "Elder, are you well? You seem sad." Thalindra took the young woman's hand, feeling the pulse of mortal blood mixed with elven heritage. "Not sad, child. I am amazed. I have lived long enough to see the end of one era and the beginning of another. I thought the death of magic would be the death of wonder. But your people, the humans, you have shown us that wonder can be created, not just inherited." She looked out at the city around them, at the towers of steel and glass, at the flying machines crossing the sky, at the screens displaying images from across the world. All of it built by hands, by minds, by the stubborn refusal to accept limitations. "The old ways are dead," Thalindra said finally. "And I am glad. What grows in their place is better. It belongs to everyone, and it will only grow stronger with time. That is the gift your people gave us. The gift of endless possibility." Sira smiled and helped the elder rise. Together, they walked out into the bright morning of a new age, where magic was just a memory and science was just beginning to show what it could do.